We are ready, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I'll call this meeting of the Seward City Council to order at 7 p.m. This is November 28th, 2022. Chief, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Tonight's roll call: Calhoun,
Here.
Barnwell,
Here.
Wells,
Here.
DeMoss,
Here.
Finch.
Here.
Osenga is excused, he may join us. Mayor McClure,
Here.
you have a quorum.
Thank you. We're now to citizens' comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing. If you look at the agenda, we have 5 items for public hearing. And if you accidentally get up to speak on that, I'll just tell you it's going to be for later, so rather than read them all. You'll have 3 minutes per speaker, and people who have signed in will have the first chance to speak. And there's 36 total minutes allotted for this agenda item. Madam Clerk, who's signed in?
Madam Mayor, the first signed in is Kat Sorensen.
Hi, my name is Kat Sorensen and I live inside city limits. I'm also the Executive Director of the Seward Chamber of Commerce, and I wanted to give a big thank you to the entire business and community of Seward for an awesome Shop Small weekend. We pulled all of our raffle prizes this morning, and we had 400 shoppers stop by the 22 stores that were signed up. That was over 197 unique shoppers, and of those 400, 327 of them said that they bought something at those stores. So after talking to some of the local businesses downtown, they said that it was their best weekend so far of the year, and we were really excited to play a role in that. And thank you to the city for also scheduling their Christmas tree lighting on the same day. It made downtown really fun and exciting this Shop Small and holiday weekend. So thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
Next signed in is Tim McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We need
Tim
your name.
McDonald, inside city limits. I was a little surprised to see that the city manager and assistant city manager didn't have a report tonight. I guess it is because we've got such a full schedule. This is pivotal time for Seward. You know, we're spending more money, I think, than we've ever spent. I think it's $180 million was the round figure they had for the new diversion tunnel through Bear Mountain. And then, of course, we're building the biggest dock we've ever had. We're getting ready to sell our utility and whatnot. So I put that down to that excuse because I figured you'd have all kinds of stuff to tell us. I'm a little bit worried that there has not been any noise whatsoever or any reports on alternative energy for the new diversion tunnel. It's, you know, I mean, I just haven't heard much about it until it just, you know, the engineers are there, the surveyors are there, they're doing it. This is a huge amount of money, $180 million. Why are we not piggybacking some alternative energy on top of that thing? It's the best opportunity for hydropower that ever came down the pike. I mean, we can lift hydropower generators up there at the diversion tunnel with the crane. You know, we don't have to do anything fancy, just lift them up there. There's already beds coming out of the mountain, cement walls, you can mount them. If it was an emergency, we could do it in 10 days. And so, you know, I think I saw in the paper, excuse me, I want to get a newspaper here, that we're having a vote next year on selling the utility to Homer. And I quote here in the paper from the city manager, if we do not sell it, we expect to have a rate study that will have an immediate 10% increase in rates with double-digit increases to follow, one after another. That's what it says right here in the paper. from your guys' office. So, we got net metering, nobody's letting us help ourselves, nobody's trying to help us by putting alternative energy, yet you're gonna sell our utility out from us to get rid of us because you owe too much on the utility and we're too much trouble. I just don't like it, fellas. I don't think it's being handled right. I don't think anybody's doing their job. I think it's dereliction of duty, not finding out what's going on up there, and there should be a lot of money being spent on this up there.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone else signed in?
Madam Mayor, last signed in is Carol Griswold.
Carol?
Good evening, I'm Carol Griswold, Inside City Limits. Action Memo 22012, approving updates to the Seward Boat Harbor Plan, is on the consent agenda. Last Wednesday, I sent 3 pages of comments on this plan, including the incorrect title of Seward Small Boat Harbor on the map, questions about liveaboards that aren't allowed by code and the tragic fatalities, concerns about replacing essential vehicle and boat trailer parking in the uplands with t-shirt shops and the harbor master's office, and the location of the washdown pad next to tourist shops and restaurants. These and other comments about the proposed ADA pier in the shallows by Scheffler Creek, the proposed tidal grid in essential fish habitat, and the unfinished land swap with the railroad, plus the usual edits, corrections, and suggestions. This plan is not yet ready for approval. Please remove it from the consent agenda and postpone it with changes until the next meeting. Last Monday, I sent comments about the permitted burn by the high school that was allowed to continue for a week in calm weather despite the hazardous air quality and complaints about the smoke that drifted over town and out the bay. It is hypocritical for Seward to ban slash burning when cruise ships are in town in order to promote our good air quality reputation and aesthetics, but let the dump and developers burn slash in our neighborhoods and near our schools when our visitors are gone. Burning slash is cheap and quick for the borough and developers, but passes the costs on to the unwilling public and the environment. It is way past time for the city and borough to move into the 21st century. I urge the council to tighten our burn permit language, require methods to reduce slash, including firewood harvesting, chipping, grinding, and drying the wood, and seek funding for an air burner to improve our air quality. Finally, I hope council will reinstate the decoration of the tree honoring Pat Ray Williams in her park, if those decorations still aren't up. Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, ma'am.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to make comments at this time? Remember, there are public hearings scheduled. Okay.
Micah Van Buskirk, Inside City Limits. I noticed on your new business tonight, you guys are going to be discussing the recreational facility, and I wanted to come again and in support of that. Over 25 years that I've lived in this community, this has been a need and a desire, and there's been huge support for it. We have documented support now. Victus's survey indicated 79% of the Seward area population voted in or selected this as a project that we should do. And then the follow-up city survey, over 72% of people said that this is something that needs to be built in our community. This is hugely supported in our community and has been for decades. I wanted to ask you guys to designate the land. The land is super important. That is the last piece. When I first started looking at this on various committees, there was land all over the place that would work. It's critical that it's up by the schools because we need to consolidate the services near our schools. That is the last little piece of land that is available that will work for this kind of facility. We cannot let it go. We cannot let it be sold to somebody else or designated for another purpose. Please look at designating that land. It doesn't have to be permanent. It can just be put on hold for the next couple of years while we go through some planning and look at other options. But that is, in my opinion, very important that we move forward with designating that land and add it to the capital improvement plans and or legislative priorities. It's been a priority for our community for years. There's people ready to start fundraising for this. There's people who want to make this happen. There are legislators that want to support this. but it needs to be one of our city priorities. And it has been proven to be a priority of our city, over 70 to 80%. It doesn't have to be the design we saw the other day. It doesn't have to be basketball courts. We can make it turf if we decide we have enough basketball courts. I know our schools in our area does not actually have enough basketball courts or courts, because we've got an A team and a B team and a boys and a girls, both at the middle and the high school. Kids are being shuffled all around. We do need more court space, and that was proven in the Victus survey also. Oh my gosh. The cruise ship terminal is going to be going away shortly. It doesn't have to include the senior center. There's a lot of stuff that we can brainstorm now as a community, and that we need to have the opportunity to get together as a community and make our priorities, not just what comes out of one survey. We do have, revenues have increased. You guys have been looking at the budget. I've been looking at the budget. There's huge increases in revenues. The campground revenue is projected to double over the next couple of years from a couple of years ago. And those credit card fees that could be used to, that's all new revenue. And there's room to increase the campground fees and designate it to pay for most, if not all. This could be a consolidation of Parks and Rec services. It doesn't have to be $400,000 of new expenses, but a consolidation of all of our Parks and Rec. But please don't let this project die. Keep it moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Last chance. Okay, seeing none, we're ready for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. I'd need a motion and a second, please.
I'll move to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or deletions or changes that anyone would like to make? Okay, seeing none, I guess we are ready to vote on the agenda and consent agenda.
Voting on the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda, Calhoun,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
DeMoss,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda are approved. Approved on tonight's consent agenda, Resolution 2022-118, authorizing the city manager to execute R&M Engineering Task Order number 2734.23.1, completing required survey and topographic examination for the new Public Works facility and appropriating funds. Resolution 2022-119, supporting Alaska joining the Multi-State Nurse Licensure Compact. Resolution 2022-120, accepting and appropriating American Rescue Plan Act federal grant funds through coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds in the amount of $577,195 for the purpose of investment in water and sewer infrastructure. Action Memorandum 2022-012, approving updates to the Seward Boat Harbor Plan. Action Memorandum 2022-013, accepting the Port and Commerce Advisory Board's recommendations concerning the 2023 to 2028 Capital Improvement Plan and directing the city manager to include the recommendations in the 2023 to 2028 Capital Improvement Plan. Action Memorandum 2022-014, canceling the December 27th, 2022 regular city council meeting. And you have approved the November 14th, 2022 City Council special meeting minutes and the November 14th, 2022 City Council regular meeting minutes.
Thank you. Okay, I have here a proclamation to make for the, oh, yeah, we're good on that. Yeah, for the varsity team. I have to go out in the hall and come around. So. Here and come back in. And I have a whole stack of proclamations here, but this is for the Seward High School Seahawks girls varsity cross-country team. And could we have the team members come in here and stand up here so they can suffer through my reading of this right in front of everyone? And the coach too, please. Or coaches. Okay. This is so everyone in TV land can see you. Whereas the Seward High School Seahawks girls varsity cross country captured their 7th Alaska Small Schools title, the first since 2007, and whereas Coach Rachel Dow, in only her second year as the coach, took a team with a single state runner in 2021 to the state champion mantle, and whereas Seward finished with 56 points, besting Grace Christian by 12 points, and Ben Homer. Just the previous weekend, Homer had beat our local runners in the regional meet, and whereas Haley Ingalls, a junior, placed 5th at 20:46 and continued her strong running performance after placing 1st overall for the Kenai Peninsula Borough and Region titles, and whereas team captain Allie Guernsey, senior, completed a successful career by improving her state 22:09 time, nearly a minute faster from the start of the season, and sustaining a team culture of enthusiasm, encouragement, and competition from her leadership. And whereas 3 underclass runners, all in their first year on the team, Maddie Haas, a freshman, Katie Van Buskirk, a sophomore, and Juniper Ingalls, a freshman, all placed in the top 25 in the state race to secure the team points against competitive Homer and Grace teams. And whereas Maddie Haas, a freshman, completed the state course in 22:28, which was nearly 4 minutes faster than the first race and highest finish on the team all season. And whereas Katie Van Buskirk, a sophomore, completed the state course at 22:28, showing focus and consistency by matching her time from regionals and improving by more than 1 minute from her first race. And whereas Juniper Ingalls, a freshman, completed the state course at 22:54, cutting nearly a minute from her regional time and 3 minutes from her first race. And whereas Natalie Sininsky's, a sophomore, state time of 24:25 raced consistently throughout the season, nearly matching her personal best at 24:13. And whereas Stella Dowse, a junior, 25:17 state time was more than 90 seconds faster than her first race. And whereas to decide the winner, placements for the top 5 finishers from each school were tallied and the points were calculated, Seward's runners' impressive times and grit on a difficult course made the difference. And whereas this championship team represents the purest sense of community inclusivity with runners from Seward to Moose Pass as well as girls who homeschool. And whereas Coach Dow relied on her Seward legacy as a 1997 Seward High graduate and bestowed her fitness knowledge to increase the stamina, strength, and drive of this team to inspire the best performance from each runner. And whereas Coach Dow worked relentlessly all season to ensure these girls competed on challenging courses across the peninsula to gain experience running again against other communities. And whereas, with a sense of deference and respect to the legacy of Coach Dan Marshall, Coach Dow infused Seward's culture of running through club activities and a regular presence on Seward's world-class trails all summer and fall. Now, therefore, I, Sue McClure, Mayor of the City of Seward, Alaska, do hereby congratulate the Seward High School Seahawk girls varsity cross-country team when they captured their 7th Alaska Small Schools title. This is dated this 28th day of November 2022. Congratulations. Pass these out, and you have an opportunity to say a few words, coaches or runners. It's your big chance.
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
Well, running's a big deal to me, so. Okay, well, congratulations again. Thank you for being here. There'll be a brief pause while I go back around.
Me too. That was fast.
I know, I run, see, I'm a runner. That's the thing, right?
Faster than anyone here.
Yeah, I know, I'm very, very fast. Okay, as they clear out.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, I know, how many seconds. Okay, so here we are on our agenda, and right here it says City Manager Report. We do have a report, and City Manager, would you please
Sure.
report?
Thank you. I have a couple of items to report on, and then I have two department directors are going to give you an update. So one thing that I wanted to report on was that the date for the community conversation has been changed. It was on February 23rd, now it's March 2nd. I'll provide more information when I have it. February 23rd is actually AML, and so decided to move the date. We're still confirming location just to make sure that date works, but I'll get you more information as soon as I have it. A couple of things that I wanted to follow up on that have been mentioned. The Army Corps of Engineer project, the $185 million tunnel project, is the Army Corps of Engineers, not the city project, but it is in the design phase, and we do receive updates from the Army Corps, and they do a great job of keeping us informed of where they are, and they're in the design phase at this time. I had a really good meeting with Royal Caribbean. As you know, Royal Caribbean is the anchor tenant at our port, and they and myself lobbied on behalf, in support of, I should say, in support of the railroad project and their bonding that they needed to receive authority from the state on. And Royal Caribbean is committed to being here, super excited about the project, and of course they're working directly with the railroad on that. And we're in support of however the railroad needs, which they haven't approached us about anything at this time. As you know, there are some really great lights going on all over town. Thank you to the community and to the city, and I will at some point have a list of all the employees involved, but I don't want to miss anyone tonight just going off the top of my head, but I do want to thank all of our city employees and the council for appropriating the funds for this. It's been a great deal of fun. There's 5,400 more feet of lights coming. We were, subject to supply chain issues as well, and they're coming. Part of it was to go on the tree out there, but actually the lights look really cool as is, so they may end up somewhere else. But thank you for your support, and thank you to all of the city employees that have helped. We really do appreciate it. And so Norm has, Harbor Master Norm Regis has an update about the Coast Guard.
Thank you. So just Norm Regis outside city limits, but here's the Harbor Master. So we got an email from the Coast Guard on Wednesday saying that they are going to be making us an offer for the land across the bay. Don't know what it is, but they're going to hopefully make it this week. Received another email from him this morning. So, but it's not the offer yet. So all the stuff has been done. I want to thank Senator Sullivan's staff for helping push things through, because we were at a stop there. So anyways, coming soon we're going to have the offer. We're going to probably have to have a work session or something on that to decide. You guys decide how we're going to do. We're going to accept the offer or not. So until then, I just want to give that update because we haven't had nothing for a long time.
Okay, and then another update from Doug, the Public Works Director. There he is, regarding the library repairs.
Doug Chesler, Public Works Director here inside city limits. Just report on the library. I don't know how much council knows about what was going on at the library. We had some a broken pipe over one of the boilers, which happened to be the boiler that was working at the time. We've had some real issues with those boiler systems down there. A lot of it was actually traced back to the original install back 8, 9, 10 years ago now almost. So there's some real issues, the way they tighten pipes down right on the ball valves and crushed right into the gaskets on it. I'm surprised it held as long as it did. There was multiple issues, but the big leaks went in there. We went into some emergency repairs. Got the contractor down here right away. They responded. Was able to go through several days of work with them. We were able to get it up and running and keep heat in the library the whole time. But there were several issues we had to take care of, including the aforementioned parts we had to replace just to get the leaks all stopped. But then there was also some issues with the electric boiler, the main electric panel, and some wiring that cooked in there a little bit, and there's just some things that were really, it's a spot that we as a Public Works or a normal inspector, that's a cabinet you just don't open. That's a big voltage in there. It's something you hire somebody that's trained to do that particular one. They went in, replaced quite a bit right in there to get that thing. Both boilers are up and working as they're supposed to. They weren't talking to each other right. We had to replace some different transmitters in the system. That system over there, when it was built, it was state-of-the-art type of thing. It was everything's computerized. One runs off another, and more adjustments adjust to one, it affects something else in that building, and so there's a lot to it that goes through that. So we basically got the professional contractors there that were doing what needs to be done. We went through almost everything in that boiler system itself to get it up and running, to replace anything that was bad, and just make sure it was gonna run on the gas boiler like it should, which is way cheaper than the electric boiler. And then if that were to go out, test it to be sure that the electric boiler would then kick on like it should. It was not doing that in the past, but we were able to fix those issues. We went through some other smaller repairs while we were there, and tried to take care of some other small leaks, but there's been some other issues in the library that had some small leaks dripping here and there, and so we've had to take care of that. Back, we had the lights. I don't know if you heard if you've been over there, sometimes you hear a beep, 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 and there was, like every other light fixture, was a emergency light. Well, they all have batteries in them. And when you look at how many light fixtures are in that library, we had to go through the last couple of years going through having the contractor do those. So anyway, I guess what I'm getting at, there's a lot of maintenance to do on that. It's a higher level maintenance than what we're normally able to provide with things. I would just like to make sure we look at our budget for the library to set in. We really should do a yearly inspection every year. Should be gone through that system, make sure it's good. We do have remote access with the contractor now, and it should be, if we have an issue, call the contractor, have them dial it up. Should be a fairly cheap way to do it and deal with those things. And at least quarterly, just have them go through that system and make sure something hasn't changed. But there's I had several suggestions, and I've gone through a little bit with the city manager, and we'll see what we can do to make those happen. But all in all, I guess the bottom line is it's up and running well. It's back to the way it was designed to run. Still kind of finding these Easter eggs as we go. So, just from that original install back then, we could happen to get something that they put in some less than high quality parts. And I'd be glad to answer questions if we have.
Questions? Councilmember Tomas.
Thank you. I have one question. Can we go back to the original contractor for damages?
It's 10 years, and what's the warranty? A lot of this stuff didn't start really breaking down and having issues until, there's some at 5, 6 years, little things, and it just progressively got worse as we got to the 10-year. And then where we find them now, 10 years later, I don't think there's anything we can go back on. I guess they can check to see, but I don't even know if that original contractor's still in business. I think they're out of business. And that's probably why.
Other questions?
I wish.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Was the roof damage, in addition to this, so was the roof damage due to poor craftsmanship in the beginning, or how?
You have to be more specific what you mean.
Wasn't there some roof damage on the library recently?
Not recently. Way back there was some that they did, and they did some extra repairs that was under warranty.
Okay.
And they did take care of some of those, but there's been some little things here and there that they've had to look at. And some of that is, the early stuff was under warranty and was replaced, and then we had some issues over on the south end, a little awning type thing that goes over that was able to get fixed, but I don't believe that was still under warranty.
Any questions? Thanks.
Nothing else, Madam Mayor.
Okay, any questions for the city manager on anything in the report? Councilmember Calhoun?
Thank you. I just have a couple
small things. I wanted to say that I like the Human Resource Manager's report, a new format on that. Just a couple of questions with that. I noticed that in the police manning, we proposed to defund the corporal position 2023-24 budget. And I thought that I had read also that we were going to, for 2023, defund the finance director position. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But I didn't see that annotated there.
I did not list that there. My apologies. It is defunded in the budget.
In the budget.
But not on this, and this will get updated.
And then my other one, if I can, one more. But we are funding a firefighter position, which is also not annotated
Madam Mayor.
here. Is that because we haven't actually done that yet? Is that, okay. All right, thanks, that's all.
Other questions for the, yes, Councilmember DeMoss.
I have a question about the fire hydrant snow removal. I'm just wondering if I think at one time, Doug, we were talking about potentially building covers for them. And since we didn't get a response to the RFP, I just don't think that residents are gonna do it, like we're encouraging them to do it. So I wonder if we have a better plan.
Do you mind, Mayor?
Yes.
So right now, at this point, our plan is that the volunteer firefighters, when they can, which is very difficult, will help, it will assist, and then Public Works when they can. What we don't want to do, it's an issue, pull them off the streets for the fire hydrants, but yet fire hydrants are super important as well. So we're really battling what to do. We can't get a response. Last year, we tried even hiring an employee for it, that we couldn't get any applicants. We did the RFP, we didn't have any responses. We're going to try again hiring a temporary laborer for it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to ask that too. Any other questions? Okay, Councilmember DeMoss.
Sorry. I have a question that I meant to ask Chief Kreitz before. I don't think
he got toned out.
Okay, so maybe administration could just pass it
Okay.
along. I noticed on the building permit number, it doesn't seem right. I had mentioned it at a previous meeting, and it still doesn't seem right. I don't think we took in 10 million in building permits this year. So maybe we could I'm just interested
Sure.
in seeing what the actual number is.
Okay, thank you. We'll get that info.
Okay. She'll come back. Any other questions? Okay, that completes the city manager's report. We have listed in the agenda other reports and things, but if there isn't one, we just don't have them. And so we're moving down to public hearings. Everything else has been on the consent agenda. So our first public hearing item is ordinance 2022-015. Madam Clerk, would you please read that?
Ordinance 2022-015 is amending the land use plan to rezone proposed Tract B Hemlock subdivision from institutional zoning district to park zoning district.
Okay, I need a motion and a second to enact ordinance 2022-015.
I'll motion to enact ordinance 2022-015.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Generally, administration does an overview, and then we would open it for public hearing, correct?
Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Mayor. This evening, we have our planner, Courtney Brinkhurst here, who will speak to this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Courtney.
So, this rezone is in correlation with the replat that is also on the agenda tonight. So it's taking that parcel of land at 911 Hemlock Avenue and separating the campground, Forest Acres Campground, from the bike park. So Tract A would be the campground and Tract B would become the bike park. And this particular rezone is then just focusing on the bike park portion, Tract B, rezoning it from institutional to park, as park is more fitting for that use of a bike park. And then the land use management plan does state right now for this parcel of land to sell with an appropriate development plan. But as it sits right now, with the campground and the bike park together, that isn't how we want to sell it. We want to preserve the bike park so that it remains something for the community. So this rezone is intended to do that, to preserve the bike park.
Okay, thank you. I'll open this item to public hearing at this point. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed in?
Madam Mayor, we do not have anyone signed in.
Okay, would anyone care to speak on this particular ordinance? You would have 5 minutes. Okay, you have to state your name again, etc.
Tim McDonald, Inside City Limits. I can hear her, but she has a very soft voice. I don't know what this is. I'm used to guys being on deck and yelling, so we have sufficient volume. I don't really understand what she was saying about the bike park to the campground. There is something about they wanted to get rid of the bike park and keep the campground, so I don't really understand. Maybe somebody could give us another overview. No offense at all, your voice is just really soft and my ears are old. And I'd like to know what's going on, a little bit more, somebody do an overview of it, just 30-second overview or something.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this subject? Okay, then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. My understanding is we're just rezoning the bike park to park. That's all this does. And keeps the other part where the campground is, the campground. Because the bike park is sort of more a park than anything else. That was my understanding. And so, council, do you have any comments, discussion on this at all? No? I guess, Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote then.
Voting on the enactment of ordinance 2022-015. Calhoun?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Thank you. Now to the second public hearing item. This would be ordinance 2022-016. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title in?
Ordinance 2022-016 is amending Seward City Code 15.10.140B49 definitions, lodging, 15.10.226B, land uses allowed, modifying and including additional regulations relating to lodging, short-term rentals, and 15.10.226, land uses allowed table.
Thank you. I'd ask for a motion and a second to enact ordinance 2022-016.
I'll motion to enact ordinance 2022-016.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Could we get an administration overview, please?
Madam Mayor, if I may, ask Courtney to come back up.
I know Jason Bickling spoke. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, we were just wondering if there is a microphone,
Is it
if
on?
it is on.
It's on.
It is on. Okay, so that's the best we can do.
Closer.
Okay, thank you.
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
No problem.
Okay, so Community Development Director Jason Bickling spoke to this last city council meeting on the 14th, kind of explaining what this entails, but I'll briefly run through the main parts of this ordinance. This ordinance would now require a fee for short-term rental permits. This fee would be established by city council resolution as set by the fee schedule. The fee will be issued for each separate advertised rentable lodging unit. Insurance will now be required, and this is insurance that's not just home insurance, it's business insurance for short-term rental. Then in all principally residential districts, which would be rural residential, single-family, two-family, multifamily, and urban residential, short-term rentals would now be limited to only owner-occupied dwellings, and to the rental of not more than 50% of the bedrooms to a maximum of 3. We are proposing an amendment that with this specific point where we would allow a dwelling to be considered owner-occupied if it is being occupied by a renter with a legally binding 1 year or longer rental agreement. So what this would mean is if you had a single-family dwelling with an efficiency apartment, someone could own that single-family dwelling and have a long-term renter in that single-family dwelling, and then a short-term rental in the efficiency. Without this amendment, though, an individual would be required to live in that single-family dwelling if they wanted to rent out the efficiency apartment as a short-term rental. Then in principally residential districts, R2, R3, and UR, which are the districts that allow for multifamily dwellings, a multifamily dwelling is limited to not more than 50% of the dwelling units, with one of the units being the owner's principal place of residence. So only half of those units could be used for short-term rentals, and an owner would have to live in one of those units. Then in commercial districts, we're just specifying that this would exclude the industrial zoning districts, so just commercial districts of office residential, auto commercial, harbor commercial, and central business. Short-term rentals are allowed with the rental of not more than 5 guest bedrooms, and that's how it's currently written in code, because more than 5 guest bedrooms then becomes a hotel motel. However, an important point to note is that within principally commercial districts, lodging within a single-family residence is now going to be limited to home occupation of being owner-occupied. And this is intended to preserve the single-family dwellings that are primarily in this downtown area. If you look at our zoning, there's a lot of commercial zoning districts, auto commercial, even central business districts that have many single-family homes in them. And so we're focusing just on the single-family homes as these are ideal for long-term residents and families. And so these would be single-family homes that are not currently being used as short-term rentals, and they would not be allowed, according to this proposed language, they would not be allowed in the future to be developed into short-term rentals. However, individuals who have vacant land could build on that land in commercial districts to develop a short-term rental lodging. That lodging, however, would have to meet the requirements of a multifamily dwelling, not a single-family dwelling. And this means not necessarily the structure of it, but the fire and safety codes surrounding. So internally, the home could look like a single-family dwelling, but it would need to meet the requirements of a multifamily dwelling. And this to ensure more safety, around a short-term rental dwelling is not being used as a typical single-family dwelling. And so that's another reason for this language here. And then the proposed amendment in this, if you have your amendment sheet, would also be included here that within principally commercial districts, a dwelling may be considered owner-occupied if it is being occupied by a renter with a legally binding 1 year or longer rental agreement. And we're proposing this terminology because, one of the reasons that the Planning and Zoning Commission put together this new terminology was to help preserve housing for long-term residents in Seward. And we feel that if there is a long-term renter in a home, that we're still accomplishing that desire, that purpose of preserving housing for Seward residents. So this is why we're proposing that it doesn't necessarily need to be owner-occupied as long as it's being used for long-term housing. Then, in number 10, multifamily dwellings in principally commercial districts will be allowed for short-term rentals, and they're not required to be the business or property owner's principal place of residence. They can just be multifamily residents in commercial districts can be rented full out for short-term rentals. However, within principally commercial districts, an individual must wait 4 years from the January of the following year after purchasing a multifamily dwelling before applying for a non-owner occupied short-term rental permit. What this terminology means, if a multifamily dwelling is in a commercial district and it's not currently a short-term rental, if it is purchased by someone and there's long-term renters in that building, the new owner will need to wait 4 years before they can get a permit to turn that entire building into short-term rentals. That's what that means. Then the following will be just the amendments that we're proposing. So number 12 would be an amendment to clarify what it requires to maintain a short-term rental license for those business operators that are now going to become a non-conforming use according to this new terminology. So in order to maintain a non-conforming short-term rental property, this requires at least 60 nights of rental annually as demonstrated by bed tax receipts. And this was determined after discussing this with other short-term rental property owners, what's a reasonable amount of time for someone who is seriously engaged in short-term rental operation, what would be a reasonable amount of time that they could operate in a season. And 60 nights was determined a reasonable amount of time as demonstrated by bed tax receipts. So if an individual who is operating a short-term rental and it's a non-conforming use based on this new language, if they do not operate for at least 60 nights, as demonstrated by bed tax receipts, they would then lose their license, and they could not operate their short-term rental anymore. So they need, if an individual becomes a non-conforming use when this language gets enacted, then they need to maintain that business year after year by 60 nights. And as long as they maintain it, then they're fine. Then we're proposing sections to this ordinance. So the sections are binding, but they won't be codified. And so these sections, we didn't want to codify these sections because they're mainly regulatory means for us to establish in this transition period what is considered a non-conforming rental, and if a property owner owns a vacant property, how are we going to handle that? So this is mostly to guide us and to help individuals in the community that we can point to, this is what has been established by City Council to guide us through this transition. So a non-conforming short-term rental would be defined as a business which has operated at least 60 days in one of the last 5 years, so 2018 through 2022, as demonstrated by bed tax. And then a property owner that owns a vacant property has 2 years to develop that property as a non-conforming use to these approved short-term rental regulations. And they must contact the Community Development Department by June 30th of 2023 and notify the department of their plans. And then the property owner is required to be in active development by December 31st of 2024. That's intended to give them adequate time, 6 months to at least come to us and notify us of their plans, and then basically 2 years for them to become an active development. So that doesn't mean they need to be completed with their project, they just need to have got the building permit and they're moving forward on their project by December 31st of 2024. And I didn't clarify it specifically, so I'm just going to go back to the primary amendment number 1, that first point, which would be 6A, that does need to be corrected to within principally residential districts, so not commercial.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so in the short-term rental amendments page, if you look under the primary amendment number 1, the first bullet point, it says right now it says within principally commercial districts, but that needs to state within principally residential districts.
So you're changing your amendment?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there any questions?
I think at this point, we'll open it to public hearing, and then we may have questions for you when it comes back, okay? Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing for ordinance 2022-016, and what I failed to mention before, if you want to speak on this, you have 5 minutes per person, and after all speakers have spoken, you could have a second shot at it for no more than 1 minute on any public hearing. I should have said that. So is there anyone signed in to speak?
There is. The first person signed in is Doug Schessler.
You know the routine for the record.
Doug Chesler, inside city limits, and speaking privately, not as Public Works. I just have some maybe confusion a little bit on the commercial part of these amendments and the part of the what we're trying to change here. I'm a little confused as I live in an auto commercial district. And living in an auto commercial district, when I bought the house, I know what I had there with the different things I could do with that property. The people that lived there that have bought those properties knew what's going on there too. I mean, it allows me as a property owner to just run several different businesses. If I want out of there, I'd have to get a permit to do those things. But if you look down auto commercial, it's probably the least restrictive of most of the properties. I, like many others, I mean, I paid a pretty premium price for that property. And a big part of it was I could do other things rather than just live there. I haven't developed into different things. I've done just a little bit of rentals, and I have a long-term rental permit right now. But I look at that as a commercial property. I'm in a commercial zone, and I feel that maybe not. Maybe it feels like a little overreach to me that I could do this, and now some of it I can't. I could start it as long as I'm living there, but can I sell it? Once I go to sell it, the new owner can't do it for 4 years. If I'm understanding it correctly, I'm not sure. And so it might not be quite right, but there's some things on how does that work with my property value or others like me in those commercial zones. We've got a lot of residential housing and a lot of different B&Bs, nightly rentals that are in the residential areas. Yet commercial was made for commercial, even though there are residences in commercial, it's listed commercial. And it's the way it was on there. Now we're changing some of that. And I guess as I went through these, there was just a lot of reference to commercial, different commercial dwellings, commercial districts, the one she corrected. But within principally commercial districts, a dwelling can be considered, and it keeps going with several of those statements. But in number 9, I had a question that it says within principally commercial districts, and it lists them. Lodging with a single-family residence is limited to a home occupation within an owner-occupied dwelling, which is the owner's principal residence, and to the rental of not more than 50% of the maximum bedrooms. It confuses me on that. Can I not now have and I'm just throwing something out, before I could have a coffee spot in the back if I really wanted. I could do different business things in my property, and I don't understand how that really says. It's trying to limit the home, but it's also saying it's limited to just a home occupation within the owner-occupied dwelling. So does that mean I can only have like a tax thing inside that I run? Or does it, it restricts me from an auto commercial that I already have auto commercial codes, and now it takes that differently. So I may just be confused, but I've talked to several others in the same neighborhoods that have a lot of confusion of what are we doing in a commercial that we've already listed as commercial listing, and now we're going in trying to make any of those residences in a commercial be the same as in a R1, R2, R3, the residential districts, I should say, not one of those in particular. So that's my concerns on it. I'm confused on what that is, and that number 9 really is something that bothers me. I just want to be sure that if I go to sell my property, am I losing value in that property that I just paid for when I bought it? That I literally could do all those things. before, I can have a nightly rental. I just have to get my license and pass the inspections. Now we're adding insurance and those things, but do I have to do that within the next year? If I'm owner occupied, I'm good, but before I didn't have to be owner occupied. If I moved out of state for something, could I now not do that even though it's in auto commercial? So those are my questions on just what it really means in these commercial, that we kind of went from residential, trying to keep the nightly rentals out of residential, and to add, I know it's to add residents for year round, but seems like we've drifted into the full-on commercial, taking up all of those and just making them all one. So that's my questions on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good timing. Is anyone else signed up?
Yes, ma'am. Next signed up is Carol Griswold.
Carol Griswold, inside city limits. It is difficult to have much discussion when last-minute amendments are presented as a laydown just prior to the second hearing and enactment of an ordinance. I do not recall these amendments being reviewed or discussed at P&Z by the commission or public. If the purpose of amending short-term rentals is to help reduce their number and increase long-term rentals, allowing a renter to participate in short-term rental business does not make sense. Owner-occupied should mean owner, not renter. If the owner can't live there, then let that dwelling be a long-term rental. Who will enforce this arrangement to ensure that a legally binding long-term rental agreement is in place? The existing item 13 does not allow apartment unit tenants to rent individual rooms as short-term rentals, so why should tenants of single-family residences be allowed to participate in short-term rentals? The renter could camp for the summer and rent the entire house as a short-term rental. Apartments should not be used for short-term rentals either, as they are the most desirable and affordable housing. Please do not expand the business of short-term rentals to tenants. Delete amendments 6A and 9A. Item 12, does a conforming short-term rental property license require 60 nights of rental annually? If non-conforming short-term rentals are required to rent 60 nights, then conforming short-term rentals should too. Add at least 60 nights. Does the IRS consider 60 nights rental enough to be a business? Add section 12A that the non-conformity must comply with code 1510-315, non-conforming lots, structures, and uses. This will clarify that if the non-conforming use is discontinued for 1 year, that use is no longer permitted. Section 4 allows a now non-conforming short-term rental business to stop operations in the last 5 years, but does not specify that these historic non-conforming short-term rental businesses must operate as a short-term rental with at least 60 nights of rental starting in 2023, or lose the business. That needs clarification. Section 5 is also problematic. A legal non-conforming use is a use of a property that was allowed under the existing zoning regulations but is no longer a permitted use. Allowing a non-conforming use into the future is a slippery slope that favors current owners of vacant properties with an arbitrary deadline of June 30th, 2023, to declare plans to be in active development by December 31st, 2024. Why allow development of short-term rentals on vacant property but prohibit short-term rentals on developed property? That seems unfair. Why the extension to June 30th instead of immediately upon enactment of this ordinance? What is active development? A building permit? A hole in the ground? A foundation covered in visqueen? Who decides and who enforces? Again, if the point is to reduce short-term rentals in favor of long-term rentals, do not allow this amendment. As stated in my comments at the ordinance introduction, section 11 should be changed from individual, or that should be probably item 11, should be changed from individual to business owner or owner in the first line. Only the business owner or owner should be allowed to apply for a non-owner occupied short-term rental permit. In the second sentence, change may be obtained to may be applied for, as there is no guarantee that the permit will be automatically issued as implied. I had other comments about the disjointed arrangement in the land uses allowed table, the obsolete B and B definition, etc. I hope that you have considered those comments. P&Z has also been working on a new definition for rental long-term that would be appropriate to add to this section. Please consider these changes and bring it back for approval at the next meeting. Thank you.
Anyone else signed in?
No, ma'am.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak that hasn't spoken before on this? Okay.
Tim McDonald, Inside City Limits. I agree with everything both previous speakers said. Just to paraphrase it, I realize you're trying to solve a problem, but you're manipulating a property owner's right to use their property, restricting is a better word, use it, and you don't share in the investment or the overhead of that property, but you do take a good portion of the profits. So it's probably unconstitutional, that thing. You need to provide more housing, not, you can't tell somebody they can only use it if they're out of compliance, but they do 60 days a year, they're okay, but if they're only doing less than 60 out of compliance, they're not okay. That doesn't make any sense, you know, and the 4-year rule, none of it. You're just twiddling with things and avoiding the problem and interfering with property owners' right to use their property the way it is thing. It's an unreasonable, I think the legal term would be unreasonable imposition on the property owners.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone else wishing to speak on this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council members, what's your thoughts on this?
I'll go first.
Okay, Councilmember DeMoss, you may.
I have some concerns about the language with auto commercial and commercial zones in the regulation. I didn't really at first, and I know how much work you guys have done on this, and I was working on it again today, trying to really take a close look at some of the commercial language, and I've just received a lot of comments, I don't know if you guys have, about concerns with the commercial language and including the commercial zones in this. I think that when you are looking at the residential neighborhoods, it makes sense, and I think that if you buy a home in a residential neighborhood, it makes sense that you're not planning a business and investing and that kind of thing. But when you do buy something, even if it is a single-family home in a commercial district, when there might be a hotel right next door and a bar right on the other side, I think that you're intending to purchase a property in a commercial district, and you are purchasing that property with that value. And so I've had some concerns with that from the beginning, and they're usually, you guys have been great about answering all my questions, but I'm still finding that a lot of people have those concerns with the commercial zones being included. So I don't know how you guys feel about this.
Other comments, other council members? Councilmember
I have
Mills.
multiple concerns as well, and I think that we should pull this and talk about it again.
Okay.
I have multiple concerns on it too, but
Councilmember Finch.
there are, let me see, I know there's neighborhoods right now, residential areas being affected left and right. I personally went from a neighborhood full of kids to a neighborhood with no kids, under just B&Bs. I'd like to see something be done. Can we adjust this as we go, or?
That's that's,
Madam Mayor.
I thought,
I can speak
yeah,
to
Madam
the-
City Manager.
I can speak to the process. So
Thank you.
thank you. So an ordinance, first, as this ordinance, as you have it, you can amend tonight, as you will. And then when it's adopted, there can be more amendments to the language once it's adopted. So for instance, we had the developer reimbursement program language codified, and there were amendments made to it because it hadn't been working the way we intended it to. So there were amendments. So any code language can be amended at any time.
Okay, thank you.
It takes an ordinance to do that.
So we could,
Councilmember
this
Finch.
just popped in my head, could we do the residential section of it, and worry about the commercial later? Is that what you're saying, or?
Madam Mayor?
Oh, yes, Madam City Manager.
That would be amending all language to do with commercial. I don't know if that might be a harder amendment to take on right now, tonight, without, really putting thoughts into how that would work. That would be a concern to just take out all commercial, making sure there are no ramifications for the rest of it. So that's just my thought here.
Councilmember DeMoss.
I think what I would like to do, and, I'm just going to throw it out there, I think I would like to make a motion to refer it back to P&Z for further analyzation of the need to include commercial and auto commercial zones in the ordinance.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We can discuss Councilmember DeMoss's motion, if there's discussion. And you would just refer it back for
P&Z to further analyze it based on the
no deadline or
comments and
something.
that must be
You didn't put a date, okay.
On the commercial side of it, or?
Councilmember Finch, what was your question?
On the commercial side of it only, or all of it?
In commercial and auto commercial zones.
Okay, and Councilmember Barnwell.
I was wondering if is it Courtney could come up and talk to this issue a little bit.
Answer.
I noticed that could you talk to this a little bit more about your intent for the auto commercial?
Do we have
Is it
to
possible?
suspend the rules to do that?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Madam City
I
Manager.
refer to the clerk, there is a pending motion to postpone, to refer.
Right,
so
there
the-
is that.
The motion actually.
We should just discuss the motion at this point.
Okay.
refer.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, thank you. Further discussion on the motion to postpone. Yeah.
You know, there are probably only a couple people that know more than I do about how much work planning and zoning has put into this. And I agree that there are some issues that need to get ironed out a little bit. I don't know that referring it back to them again is necessarily the best way to do it. I think maybe it's something that we could do maybe in a special meeting before one of our next meetings, get it ironed out, make the amendments and changes we want to at the regular meeting, and then move on with it, because nobody's ever going to be happy with what is in here. There's going to be somebody somewhere that's not happy with what we do concerning this. Because the intent for us, in my thought process through this whole thing, is to get a better handle on nightly rentals in residential areas. Not necessarily the whole commercial area, because there are some concerns with that when you buy property in a commercial zone that you're allowed to do all kinds of stuff with. But I think it's more owner-occupied in residential areas where we're trying to control all of the single-family housing units in Seward becoming VBROs or Airbnbs or whatever you want to call it. I don't know that kicking it back to P&Z and having them go through their cycle for another couple of 3 meetings or whatever it takes, and then it's coming back to us again in the spring by the time we all get there. They've put a lot of work. There are some questions to answer, but I actually think we could probably get that done maybe in a meeting of our own. That's just my thought.
Okay. Other thoughts? We're discussing now whether to turn it back to planning and zoning. Yes.
Could I
Madam
maybe
Superintendent.
throw out a little bit of maybe to work for both, have a joint meeting? And then that way you can ask the questions back and forth. Joint special meeting to talk about it, and then have it be at the regular meeting to then amend? Just a thought.
How would the maker of the motion feel about amending or about that possibility? That kind of brings both together. I personally, I couldn't vote yes on this tonight.
Neither.
I had a lot of input, and mostly the concern is the auto commercial. Well, there's been a lot of concern, so I'm not ready to vote on this tonight either, but I think I hear that loudly. Planning and zoning spent a lot of time on this, and giving it back, would we get the product we want anyway? But if we had a work session, a joint special meeting.
Do this. I would do it at a special meeting, but.
Yeah,
we can work that
and
out.
try to,
I would like to withdraw my motion.
okay. Do you want to make a new one?
And I would like to motion.
Oh, does the second
sorry.
agree to withdraw?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that motion's withdrawn, we'll try again. Okay.
So I'll motion to postpone to have a special meeting between council and planning and zoning to further analyze the details of this ordinance.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, now we can talk about that. It would mean setting up a meeting and all that. Yes, Councilmember Wells?
Yep, so I agree with Councilmember Calhoun that it's something that we need to address quickly, right? We don't want to drag it out into next summer. So I do think having a special meeting is a great idea. Is this something we would be doing in December, in the very near future? Would this be January?
I would say January.
January, so then before spring, we should have this wrapped up. Okay.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Can I ask council to consider having a joint work session rather than a special meeting? Because if it's a special meeting, it's another public hearing item. And if you have a joint work session, you're free to discuss at will, and then when it comes back to council, you can make any amendments that you wish.
How does council feel about that? If we had a special meeting, we could actually come up with something definitive, right? With P and
It's fine
Z.
if you
I
want
mean,
to do it.
that's what we're talking about. That was more for the public. Councilmember Calhoun?
I think too, and I could be off base on this, wouldn't a special meeting give the public more input than a work session? Because actually at a work session, potentially, they don't have any input at all. They just have to sit and listen.
So, we're sticking with
Thank you for
special
the
meeting,
suggestion,
but
but I think we'll
yes,
stick
I
with
think
this.
that's important to clarify. Okay, so how does the motion read again, please?
A motion to, I'm sorry, can you?
To
Yeah.
postpone, to have a joint special meeting with planning and zoning.
Do we want to add the words to,
Further discuss the details
yeah,
of the ordinance
There you go.
2022-016.
I think that should be in there. Okay, any more discussion on that, or are we ready to vote on that motion? I think we're ready to vote on the motion.
Okay, voting on the motion to postpone, excuse me, Calhoun,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
The motion to postpone is approved.
Okay, thank you, and Madam City Manager, you'll work your magic to come up with the date. Okay, does anyone need a 5-minute break? Yes?
Sure.
Could we, we'll take a 5-minute break, okay, and we'll come back, well, 6 minutes. How about 8:20, we'll come back, okay? We'll be on Resolution 2022-115 at that point. Just waiting.
And we are ready, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we're back at 8:20. We're now to resolutions requiring public hearing. Those were ordinances requiring public hearing. And we are at Resolution 2022-115. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title in?
Resolution 2022-115 is recommending Kenai Peninsula Borough approval of the preliminary replat of Fort Raymond subdivision, replat number 1, Lot 12A, located at 911 Hemlock Avenue, creating Hemlock subdivision, tracts A and B.
Thank you. I'd need a motion to approve and a second, please.
I'll motion to approve Resolution 2022-115.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to ask Ms. Bringhurst to come back.
Here she comes.
This is the replat of 911 Hemlock Avenue, and it's just separating Forest Acres Campground from the bike park. The uses, I'll reiterate, are staying the same, but it'll just be two separate parcels. The campground, Tract A, the bike park, Tract B.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the public hearing on Resolution 2022-115. Is there anyone signed up, Madam Clerk?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this particular resolution? Okay.
I just wanted to put my...
We need your name for the record
sorry.
again.
Tim McDonald, inside city limits. I just wanted to put my 2 cents worth on that bike park. You guys are really brave building that thing, man. If some kid breaks his neck on that, you know, I mean, that thing's dangerous. You got some things on that, you know, I wouldn't let my kid do unless he was already an expert. So, I mean, I don't know, I never see anybody using it. But I mean, it's nice, it's a nice thought, but it's kind of high wire for unsupervised kids, you know. It really is.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council, do you have any discussion on this item? And if so, what is it? No discussion, I think pretty much speaks for itself. Okay, Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote on this.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2022-115. Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Demoz?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So now we're at Resolution 2022-116, also up for public hearing. And when you're ready, Madam Clerk, could you please read this one? It's going to take a bit.
Resolution 2022-116 is determining it is in the public's interest and necessary to proceed with the formation of a special improvement district for and benefiting proposed lots 1 through 75, I don't know all the abbreviations, T1 North, R1 West, Section 33, Seward Meridian Southwest, 201-3016, Gateway Subdivision, Addition Number 2, Tracts C4, C5, C6, and C7, Tract C-4 of the Gateway Subdivision, accepting the city manager's recommendation to approve the developer reimbursement application received for the Hilltop Properties Improvement District, and authorizing an expenditure in the amount of $3,993,000 for water, sewer, and electrical improvements, roads, paving, and appropriating funds.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Administration, what do you have on this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Motion.
Oh, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, that. I ask for a motion and a second, a motion to approve and a second for Resolution 2022-116.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-116.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Now,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am looking at the language that the council adopted in February of '22, and I thought I would just touch on the DRP, Developer Reimbursement Program, also known as the DRP language, and the two processes that it can be used. One being a special improvement district, which the extensions can be made by the private developer through the creation of a special improvement district, which is what this language does, the resolution before you. And then the reimbursement is through special improvement language and setting up the special improvement district. The language regarding the special improvement is in Chapter 5.22. And also private extensions, and that's when a developer pays everything up front and then is reimbursed at 50%. So with this one, we're doing, the proposal is to do the special assessments, and the city receives reimbursement through the special assessments. I just wanted to add too that we did have our engineer look at the costs listed in the application, and they found them to be the reasonable costs and fair, reasonable costs as well.
okay,
Any questions about that?
okay, thank you. I'll open it up to public hearing. Madam Clerk, has
Madam-
anyone signed in?
No, Madam Mayor, we do not have anyone.
Okay, does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? I knew there'd be someone out there. And we'll need your name and inside.
Joe Dugas, Inside City Limits. I'm one of the partners in this proposed development up the top of the next door Fognac area. It's 26 acres. It's 23.6 acres. And I grew up on Doorway up there, cruising around with many other kids and families, and been able to walk to school and play in the woods and be in town. I just ride my bike around. It was before cell phones and all that. So having listening for the last years of everyone talking about more housing, more places, and the nightly rentals has always been an issue. And you can control some of that, but you'll never make anybody happy. So creating more places for families to live in Seward has been a goal, and this is something that we talked about for a while, and took a long time to get there, but the contractor reimbursement program is what really makes it actually a viable thing to do. You know, it's a big step in the private side to want to go in and take the risk involved in developing something like this and the time. But the city being able to assist in that and share some of the costs and then recuperate some of that as all the properties get sold. I think it's a great program, and I'm very excited to be part of it, working with the city and the community, and hope to see it. Ton of little kids running around up there, families, and right up next to the school, and running around in the city. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council, any comments or discussion on this? Councilmember Calhoun?
This is just, you know, it's sort of a clarification maybe, because I've had some comments from some folks out in the community, a little bit about, maybe can we get a little clarification on the use of ARPA funds for new infrastructure as opposed to repair and maintenance of old water or sewer lines? Just to...
Sure.
That.
City manager.
sorry, I'm going to go to the CMR. So the ARPA funds are, portions of the ARPA funds and the funds that we're using are allowable for water and sewer projects. Actually, the ARPA funds do not restrict, it can be expansion or replacement. So unlike what we've talked about in the past about the revolving loan funds, that's restrictive. It's only replacement and not expansion. And we don't have any of those funds for this at all. So the ARPA does allow the expansion, and we are using a portion of that for water sewer infrastructure for this project. Did that answer your question?
Answered mine.
Okay.
I was just looking for some clarification
Sure.
for folks that are listening.
Okay.
To make sure that they understand that this is a proper use of
Yes.
those funds.
Mhm.
And that there's not an issue with that. No, because I think it's a great project and it's sorely needed. And it will also help some of the other properties up there when it's all said and done, be closer to utilities and things, so, no, excellent.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, if I
Yes.
may add, and the council through, there was an appropriation this evening, appropriated the ARPA funds into water and sewer, and then we had a meeting with, I'm going to call them the ARPA fund folks, just, the state, regarding if this was a proper use, and they said yes. So we did run it through all of that.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councilmember DeMoss.
I just want to comment that I absolutely support this, and I just want to thank you guys for doing this, taking this big project on. I think we're super lucky to have you guys here and doing this, and I'm also really excited about the developer reimbursement program working. This is exactly what we wanted to happen, and it's just so very exciting to see it happening like this. So thank you, and I hope everyone supports it.
Okay, any other comments?
I appreciate it.
Councilmember Finch.
I really appreciate what they're doing, stepping up. This program's really opened up, I think, a lot more property for people and taking a burden off.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Yeah, I second that. I'm pretty excited about this, Mr. Tugas. One comment though, as you guys, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but that's kind of my neighborhood too. I've been there a few years, and I hope you guys plan some ways for kids to access school through trails, because those kids need to be walking to school from there. So just heads up.
Okay, and I echo all of that. I'm very excited about this. I'm proud of us for coming up with the development reimbursement program, and yeah, I live in that neighborhood sort of too, and it's nice to have houses near schools, and so. With that, any other comments? We could vote? Oh, Madam
Just make a
City Manager.
comment on, actually, the developer reimbursement program is, as you stated, we get calls from other cities asking for our language and then want to know how it's working. So it's really great to be able to report how it's working and then this larger development as well. So we're pretty excited about it.
Thank you for that. Are we ready to vote? Madam Clerk, we're ready.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2022-116, Barnwell,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
DeMoss,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Thank you. Congratulations. That seemed to be a popular vote. Thank you very much. Okay, so our last public hearing item for the night is Resolution 2022-117. Madam Clerk, would you please read this?
Resolution 2022-117 is adopting the City of Seward 2023 and 2024 operating budget and setting the mill rate. This is the first public hearing for this resolution. It will come for a second public hearing and approval on December 12th, 2022.
Thank you. I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve this resolution.
I'll motion to approve resolution
2022-117.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration, do you want to speak to this?
Since we just had a meeting, I guess more for the public, as the clerk stated, it will be coming back to the council on December 12th for adoption, and I did take, from the other meeting, I had a couple of notes as we came out of that meeting that I'll just refer to. Let me get to them. Mayor, you said something, or it's Councilmember DeBoss, I'm sorry, honest and transparent regarding the budget, and I would just say that I appreciate that comment, and I hope the department heads do as well. They knew, I feel that they knew right off the bat, I don't believe in padding a budget. We're just going to present it as is, and it is the way it is, and so I appreciated that comment because that is truly what we've been striving for. So thank you for that comment. And then regarding the motor pool, and now what I'm going to call, and we'll come up with a better name, IT pool. It won't happen for the 2023 budget, for perhaps mid-year, coming up with an information technology fund to fund some of the IT needs. As you know, this year that expense went up quite a bit. And then next year it'll be down. So we're kind of like this all the time. So to create that, where similar to motor pool fund, we'll do transfers from the departments into this fund. Not quite sure how it's going to look, and we'll have to work on that. But that's the goal. And then as far as motor pool fund, I've asked MC, our finance director from the Carmen Jackson team, to look about. I asked him to calculate how much it would cost to replace all vehicles that are been funded by the motor pool fund, and it's not just vehicles, it's other things as well. And if we were to replace every single thing today, how much would it cost, and see how much we have left in that motor pool fund. If anything, we could be in a deficit. So just so that we know, I do expect that in '23, motor pool and IT pool will be working on internally, and then bring that back to you for mid-year enactment of the IT, and to address motor pool further. So that's what I have just for notes from our special meeting that I wanted to share with you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'll open it for public hearing. This is Resolution 2022-117. Madam Clerk.
Yes, ma'am. We have Kat Sorensen is signed in.
Hi, my name is Kat Sorensen, and I live inside city limits, and I am the Executive Director of the Seward Chamber of Commerce. I want to first thank the Seward City Council and the administration for all their hard work on the 2023-2024 budget, and for making the many meetings so accessible to the public. I've enjoyed sitting in and have appreciated the open communications and opportunities for discussion. It's a behemoth of a document and a task that I don't envy watching from the audience. I also want to thank the administration and council for funding the Seward Chamber of Commerce's Economic Development and Tourism Management contract with the city, and for entrusting us as the stewards of the city's brand. It's a great honor that my team and my board of directors do not take lightly, and that we take pride in executing year after year. Since 1996, when the Seward voters enacted a 4% bed tax, the Seward Chamber of Commerce has been appropriated a portion of those monies to develop visitor infrastructure, support economic development, and marketing. Since 2001, those allocated funds have been 1/2 of the prior year's bed tax collected, and are used to fulfill our contract with the city. So in 2021, we received $295,000 for the 2019's bed tax of nearly $600,000. This year, we saw a 65% drop in our funding. I never write things, so I lost my train of thought. We saw a 65% drop in our funding due to COVID-19 and received $108,000. We had to budget tightly, utilize a lot of COVID-specific grant opportunities in 2020, and rally together as a small yet effective team. But we've made it through the tight budget year while still maintaining a high level of service to our community and the city. Following the COVID-19 pandemic, we continue to showcase Seward as a popular destination to live, work, and play. The 2021 bed tax that funds the Chamber's economic development work for 2023 reflects those efforts, coming in at $700,000, as shown in the budget document. 2022's bed tax is on track to break $800,000. For 2023 and 2024, you have budgeted a flat funding rate of $300,000. This is short of the nearly $350,000 that would usually be allocated based off of our traditional funding methodology, but it's still the highest level of funding for the Chamber's work since the agreement was enacted in 1997. I'm grateful and excited about the continued trust you place in our organization and that the city recognizes the value and dedication of our team and how hard we work to fulfill our contract with the city. This includes our suite of guides, the Visitor Marine and Hometown Guide, the website seward.com, and winter weekends, community engagement and events, as well as economic development like Startup Week. We also greet all of the cruise ships, have a year-round informational visitor center and one in the harbor, and answer phone calls and emails from across the world. We're always open to any new ideas or engagement that the city may have. Our team at the Chamber is a strong and powerful tool at the disposal of the city. Our contract and funding are part of a strong, decade-long business relationship, but we're always open to growth or pivots to continue to make Seward a great place to call home. We have also received great feedback on our programs from both the city and community and have been honored as Alaska Chamber of the Year for 2022. My goal as the Executive Director of the Chamber is to ensure the enduring success of the Seward Chamber of Commerce while continually providing a high level of service to the City of Seward, the community, and to our member businesses. And I appreciate the city's partnership in helping me achieve these goals. And I thank you again for being given the continued opportunity to work so diligently for the betterment of the City of Seward for years to come. As always, if you have any questions, feedback, or ideas how we can better serve our contractual duties in the City of Seward, my door is always open. Thank you.
Anyone else signed in, Madam Clerk?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak? Tim?
Tim McDonald, Inside City Limits. Very, very nice speech, Cat. Careful on that throttle, kid. You're in an overspeed there. Sorry. I wish I could talk that fast. I'm wondering, this budget, why don't we stop and stick an emergency amendment in there, since I haven't heard of any and don't think you guys have it in there, for some alternative energy, specifically hydro, for our new diversion tunnel through the mountain. If anybody looks at the history of Seward, that's where our utilities, it didn't start there, but it was moved past to there, and they had that old cement block house up the canyon there, I believe, is a generator station for when it was a power station and powered the whole town. Right? We made all our own electricity. Gosh, what a concept. I mean, I don't think that would do it again. Our electricity needs are what done, but it's free power 24/7. More so in the summer, of course, when we need it. And it's basically a one-time expense. I mean, once you put it in, the maintenance on that sort of thing is going to be pretty darn low, man. It's an opportunity, and if you guys don't pick it up, I think it's a real disservice to us. I think we really need to talk to those engineers and those guys that are designing that project right now and find out what they've got planned and then maximize it. That's all us. Every dime they make with that creek goes to, has the potential to lower our energy bills. And we do have the highest energy bills just about anywhere, folks. I mean, it's like nobody wants to lower them or something like that. It's like, do we have to pay the highest energy bills in the United States? And so you guys got the idea on that. It's up to you. I'm not going to bug you anymore, but I think it's a bad mistake if you do not pursue that opportunity, and a disservice to all of us. So that's that. The other thing is Lowell Point. I'm trying to figure it out, whether it's a 24-inch pipeline or a 30-inch pipeline that is the outfall going 300 feet down and 300 feet out, that discharges basically 24/7. And offhand numbers, is it 30 million a month, Doug, to turn that lagoon over?
Tim, we can't ask questions, just.
Okay. I think it's 1 million gallons a day, so, and it's 8 million gallons a day, but the thing about it is, if it was the old days and this was just straight effluent without all the antifreeze from the RVs, all the chemicals that have to be dumped in it so it doesn't smell and bother the residents, all the flow agents, the mixing agents, these are all chemicals. And this is a 24-inch pipeline plus that is polluting Resurrection Bay. It is not an infinite source. It can't handle it. It's screwing up the fish, I'm pretty convinced. Everybody wonders why our fish runs have disappeared in the last 40 years. That might have something to do with it. It's not effluent. It's lots of chemicals with effluent. And, there's answers, I'm an engineer. I know what it is. And I think a centrifuge in the system from your sewer lagoon to the centrifuge, and the centrifuge takes out all the solids, which is what you do. That's all the chemicals, that's all the stuff. Then you can discharge from that centrifuge pure water. The centrifuge is just a small percentage. It can be trucked to a safe location. We need to quit dumping it in Resurrection Bay. This is not 1900. This is the 21st century, and that's a problem. We're still thinking it's 1950.
Any other people wanting to speak? We're talking about the budget. Yes.
Micah Van Buskirk, Inside City Limits. I wanted to thank you guys for all your work on the budget. The budget is easy to read, and I've been listening to your work session, so I know it's a lot. I wanted to, just as a year-round resident, and I see the numbers, the revenues going up in the budget this year significantly in some areas, and I just had some ideas or thoughts on what can we do for our year-round residents, the people who live here year-round. A lot of this is summertime money coming in, but we're the ones with the high heating bills and living here year-round. And of course, one of my ideas is a recreation facility. I won't address that too much, except that I listened about maybe another $100,000 in revenue for the Parks and Rec with credit card fees. Is there any way we could designate that towards some further development and planning, and maybe even some preliminary engineering on a recreational facility? Get a real vision of what Seward wants. Or if not that we've had some great kids that crowdfunded their own basketball courts. What can we do to get a roof over that? I'm sure it wouldn't be too expensive, but just a cover for the 8 months out of the year when it's just pouring down rain and they could still play out there. What can we do with some of this increased sales tax revenue or property tax revenue? And then prioritize maintenance on our existing trails. Two Lakes Trail is amazing. So many people use it every day. I'm out there every week with my dogs. If we could get some maintenance, the waterfront, ice clearing, people use that year round. And if we can focus on some of the things inside our city limits that people use, and the skating on Second Lake, that one's super important. And I know it's been a priority in the past. I hope it continues to be a priority. Other ideas, maybe take sales tax off of our heating fuel, even just temporarily. Our sales tax revenues would significantly higher. Maybe the year-round residents could use a break on that. I keep hearing about upcoming rate studies on all of our utilities. And water's going up 5% in the budget. Maybe hold off on that for a little bit while fuel's so high, just for year-round residents. I don't know if that's legal, but that's just an idea. What can we do for those of us who live here year-round? And then just some specific things. An idea, I know the work you're talking about, funding a new fire department positions that will mostly be for medical support for the volunteer ambulance corps, which might be needed. It's definitely the majority of our calls, but the volunteer ambulance corps makes revenue off of their calls. Is there any way to share some of that revenue? If we're being their support for, I think you said about 300 calls a year, or maybe use some of the bed tax money to fund these firefighter positions. if that's, it's mostly, he also mentioned that it's mostly visitor calls in the summertime, that's the bulk of their calls. Or even cruise tax money, is it legal to use any of the cruise ship money for that? Because it is mostly medical stuff and largely visitors. And then my last idea, or just a reiteration of the importance of our school resource officer, that I know it's not a specific line item, but just that is a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this particular resolution? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council, what you got? Councilmember Finch.
For the record, what is the current mill rate?
Madam City Manager, do you want to, I was going to make that clear to people too, that we're not
Sure.
changing it.
It's not being changed, it is at 3.84 mils.
Yeah. It's been that way for some time. It's just we have to include the mill rate in this resolution, but it doesn't change. So. Okay, other input from council on the budget? We've been with the budget now a long time, so. Councilmember Calhoun.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I would like to make an amendment to the budget, and I would like to reduce the contribution to the Chamber of Commerce to $250,000 for the next 2 years and move those funds to Parks and Rec, to the campground, revenues or losses or whatever it was that we're dealing with there.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. You're asking to reduce the chamber from 300,000 to 250,000,
Yes.
correct? And move the 50,000 to Parks and Rec for
Actually, it's
campgrounds.
little clarification.
Oh, Madam City Manager, do you want
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I understand it correctly, it's reducing the expense from the chamber,
Right.
which is under general services, and then you have to have a corresponding reduction then in revenue, so reducing the revenue.
The revenue
on
of
the
the campground.
Oh,
Because of estimated.
You're not moving the money to
I'm not
Parks and
moving the
Rec.
money, no, just
That's not how it's
reducing,
done.
I'm sorry, I misspoke that.
That's why I wanted you to rephrase that. Okay, would you say it again, please, for the public? and then
Yes,
for us?
so reducing the contribution of the chamber to $250,000 and then taking that $50,000 to, we're reducing the revenue for the campgrounds because the revenue projections may be a little bit too high. And so we're going to reduce the,
In
to
terms of
balance the
balancing
budget.
the budget.
In terms of balancing the budget.
Okay, let me just write this down. Campgrounds. Okay, there's a second, there was a second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded for that amendment. Is there discussion amongst council on that?
I can
Council-
discuss.
yes, you may
And,
speak.
you know, I don't want anybody, particularly Kat, to take this, it's nothing personal with the chamber. I think they do a great job. But I think we need to look at our bed tax revenues and some of the other things that we've got coming up over the next few years and realizing that adjustments can always be made at a later date if we want to do that. But there's also, you know, along with the contribution that we make to the chamber, there's also, if my understanding is correct, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, no lease payments made to the city for the building that they're in or the Derby booth. And I know that under the city's normal lease programs right now, the building itself would be just under $31,000 a year if they were paying a lease on that at 8% of the assessed value. And so I think that, you know, they do a great job, and I know this is not going to be popular with some people if it goes through, but I just think that if we, for the next 2 years, if we cap at that level, and then we can always take a look at it at our next budget if necessary, And if we have another down year, like we did a couple of years ago, then, you know, we may end up holding the bag on that part, you know, if we hold it at that level, so. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Councilmember Wells.
So I think that the chamber's already taken a reduction by not getting 50% of the bed tax, as Kat pointed out to us earlier today. And so I would not support lowering their funding.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Wells. I think this chamber is recognized as I think, the best in the state. And their workload has increased over the years with the increase in revenue and the increase in business in the city. I think it would be in somewhat poor form to reduce their funding at this point. In addition, the campground, that was, I think, as I heard, it was because there was a rainy period last summer that probably reflected on that revenue. So I don't see that as if anything, I think the campground fees are going to, the campground fund will probably increase over the years. And then if you look at parking, I think that ballpark figure was about $100,000 if we were to attend more diligently or to hire somebody. Hopefully we can find somebody to hire for parking. I think those are probably, for me, a better way to recoup some of our money. I just really, I would have to look very carefully at our relationship with the chamber. It seems to me it's pretty integral to the city, and I'd hate to take away from them at a time when they're just doing such an exceptional job, is my feeling.
Thank you. Councilmember Finch, you had your hand up, yes.
Why are they the only one not paying the lease? Curious as to that. They're not paying the $31,000.
I might ask the city manager, do other entities not pay leases?
Madam Mayor, so we do have a lease. We have many leases, but I'm trying to go through them in my head. You know, harbor leases are different, but the leases that I'm thinking of with other entities, say Sea Life Center or CRRC, those are $1 a year or $0. But the other leases that are at the harbor and other city facilities, there is a payment. And I'm going to turn to Norm, who's been dealing with leases forever.
Thank you. Okay, Norm.
Yes, Madam Mayor, so I believe there's 5 or 6 leases that don't collect any money. You got Sea Life Center, you got University of Fairbanks, you got the Shellfish Hatchery. We also have the Coast Guard site across the bay and the two chamber buildings. So those are $0 leases. So it's just not the only one.
Thank you for that clarification, because I didn't have the answer. Does that answer your question? Other discussion on Councilmember Calhoun's amendment? Councilmember DeMoss.
Well, I guess my thoughts on it, and based on comments I've gotten from constituents, I feel that I would be supportive of a cap, and I'm not sure of what that number, what the appropriate number is, and I'm not sure if that's something we need to revisit every year. I don't know about the 2 years. I don't know if I feel comfortable with the 50% of the bed tax, whatever that may be. I like a cap. I love our chamber. I think they do an excellent job. I'm a member. Our business benefits from it, and I absolutely want to support the chamber. But, you know, it's our job to look at things and decide what's within reason as well. So I have concerns when there's not a cap on something, and it's, a lot of people are saying, well, maybe we could use some bed tax to, you know, hire another firefighter. Maybe we could use some bed tax, since we have more bed tax, we could use some of it for this and that and this. So, you know, I think that maybe it's time to talk about just an actual number or a cap. And that's kind of where my support lies.
Councilmember Wells.
I want to say that without the chamber, how much bed tax would we be generating if we weren't generating tourism to create this bed tax? So if every business that had an Airbnb or every business was a hotel and they were all responsible to market their own business and market Seward on their own, how much of a reduction in bed tax or sales tax would we actually generate? It would be massive, because the chamber is the one who makes the phone ring for our community and for these tourism-based businesses, which are these Airbnbs, these hotels, all the private enterprise, right? So again, 50% of the bed tax would have been a lot more than 300,000. I do like having it at a number. So for budgeting purposes for the city and budgeting purposes for the chamber, I think that especially after what we saw happen in 2020 with the chamber and how they still became Chamber of the Year with less than $200,000 in revenue, I find it to be extremely impressive. And so that's where I stand with what they're doing to generate that bed tax.
Okay, other comments? I'm still making up my mind. Are we ready to vote on the amendment? Madam Clerk, could you read the amendment, please?
The amendment, as I have it, is to reduce the chamber's budget from $300,000 to $250,000 for both years, and reduce Parks and Rec campground revenue by $50,000 in both years. Okay, accurate? Okay.
Are we ready to vote? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Voting on that amendment, DeMoss,
Yes.
Wells,
No.
Finch,
Yes.
Barnwell,
No.
Calhoun,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
No.
That amendment has failed.
Okay. That's one. What else you got, amendment-wise? Council members? Anyone? Anyone? We're going to have another shot at this in a couple weeks.
I have,
Councilmember Finch?
Doug brought up a very good idea to add to his budget about a yearly check or service on the library. Can we figure out what that cost would be and add that into his budget so we don't have these issues?
Right. Madam City Manager, could we?
We do have
Ask.
$50,000 budgeted for maintenance, and that could be included in that, but we'll get the cost, the exact cost of a check, but I believe that would cover, the $50,000 will cover that.
The 50,000 is an increase over the previous budgets?
I think it's 52,000 exactly, and,
Okay.
I'll have to get back to you on the increase
Yeah,
part.
because I would agree, I'd like to see a figure, and maybe we can make that amendment at the next meeting if we have an actual number. I
I'll
want
get
it to
an
be
actual-
realistic.
What the yearly service, I guess.
Or something
service
like
cost
that.
or whatever you want to call it would be.
Like a service-
inspection.
Thank you. I agree with that. If we could direct that
Yep.
without an amendment at this time. Is that agreeable? Okay. Other discussion or amendments from council? Okay, I have none. I just want to reiterate that because this mill rate thing, people keep asking me, and it's such a confusion for people, but we're not changing it. It's the same, and it's been the same for quite a while. So, you know, if you're concerned about that, that's not the issue, at least in my mind, as people call me about these things. Okay, any other council discussion before we move on? Okay, I guess we don't have to do anything at the end of this, right? Because it's been moved and seconded to be discussed next meeting. And so we'll bring this back at our regular meeting December 12th for final discussion, amendments, and enactment. Okay, so we're moving on down to other new business. Thank you. Other new business. The first item is to determine city council participation in the 2023 state and federal legislative visits. There's a little overview of this on page 345. And basically, city manager, I guess administration can present this to us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as a legislation, as the language states, that every year that the City of Seward sends the council members and the city manager and other staff to Juneau and Washington DC for the annual legislative visits. And we use the time to advocate for our priorities, which I think we were very successful last year with our legislative priorities, and it went very well. And I might add too, it's about establishing relationships as well. So that is very beneficial to Seward. So the proposed dates for Juneau are January 18th and 20th, and Washington DC are 19th and 20th. And of course, those are the meeting dates there, so there'd be the travel dates need to be added as well. So it will be up to the city council who goes on those. And we, of course, would like to start making arrangements.
Okay. Let's start with the discussion about the Juneau trip. Do we have to pick a date there? It says 18 and 20, so...
It is recommended by our lobbyists that those are the dates.
So we should pick one of those dates, or is that 18, 19, and 20?
It's 18 and, 18, 19th, and 20th.
Oh,
Sorry
so
about
it's
that.
18th through 20th then? Oh, okay. Well, it's not how it read. Okay, and then there would be travel like the day before and the day after, even on that one.
Probably, Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, probably in the 20th, we'd return on the 20th, so meetings in the morning and then return on the 20th.
Okay, so that's what we're looking at. And as, I haven't gone on one of these trips for a very long time, but as mayor, I think I should, so I would love to go to Juneau and reconnect with some of the people there. And Madam Clerk, what's in our budget? How many could we send? We're talking both of these trips tonight, so
Both
can
of
you...
those trips were contemplated in the budget, so.
Okay,
for
but how many?
airfare and hotel, 3.
So 3 people.
Yes.
So I do know, well, I don't know. I wish Vice Mayor Osenga was here because he had spoken about DC, so we'll put that aside. I don't know about the Juneau trip. Do you recall that?
I believe that he would like to focus on DC and not necessarily Juneau.
That's what I thought. So that means we could have 1 or 2 other council members come to Juneau. And we'd like to go to Juneau. Councilmember DeMoss.
I'll go to Juneau.
She's done this before. I'd like to go with someone else that has been there, and so I would like to go, and Councilmember DeMoss, and we could take 1 other. We would not have to. I know the city manager and assistant, or just city manager would be going.
City manager, and then probably the harbor master, since we do have a SNCC
Oh.
expansion project on the
Okay,
priorities.
so that would be a good delegation if anybody else was interested.
I had a great time. It was my first time last year. I met so many people and made so many great connections. It was really a nice time.
I'm excited about getting to go somewhere.
I'd like to go, but I won't be here.
You're never here, so this, no, I'm just kidding. This isn't the real formal part of the meeting now, we can talk like that. So no one else? So let's plan on those 2 people.
Can I just consider it? I mean, do we have to make that decision now or?
How soon do we need that decision? I'm asking the clerk first or the city manager, I'm not sure who I asked.
Just travel, we could book it and then cancel it if things change, so.
Yeah, I might be interested, yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Barnwell. See, this is what you get into when you know?
I know Juneau pretty well. We could have a fun time.
Good, I need him there, okay, yeah, okay.
Changed my mind.
This will be good. Okay, so, is that agreeable with everyone for Juneau trip? Okay, and then, we need to talk about the DC trip, and Madam Clerk, I think everybody kind of knows the purpose of that. Do you want to just, Madam City Manager, I'm sorry, do you want to just say some stuff about that?
So we meet with our federal delegation, and so our lobbying firm sets up our meetings and escorts us and gives us introductions, and we meet with our delegation, but we also meet with agencies like the Coast Guard and Army Corps of Engineers, EPA. There were 3 more that I cannot remember off the top of my head. It's a very, very packed schedule, but again, it's really a good connection with this delegation. That's where I met the housing folks for the Coast Guard. Melissa, who she and I still email, we met them there. We also learned about the icebreaker and the FRC and those types of things, so that we, I suppose we could have gotten some information email, but it's a really good connection face-to-face. And of course, meeting with Senator Sullivan and Senator Murkowski. We did, obviously, with the congressperson last year because of his death, but then we would be meeting with Mary Peltola as well, so.
Okay, thank you. Well, once again, because I haven't traveled forever, I would really like to do this, and so I would like to go. And I know, even though he's not here because of a work emergency, I know that Vice Mayor Osenga had expressed he would really like to go, and he has gone before, so he would be a seasoned member of the team. And we could take one other.
What are the dates?
Oh, I'm sorry. April 19th and 20th, with travel days on encompassing, so, right?
I'm not,
You're not going to be here,
I'll
right?
be here. Physically.
So did you want, so does anyone want to, or you could, I suppose this is the kind of thing we could think on for a few days and check with family and stuff, that far in
Yeah,
advance?
I'd be open to doing DC. It's a little bit of a crunch time for me before the season. But I might, if someone else doesn't want to go, and if there's room, I might take the opportunity to.
Okay. Anybody want to put in, or just, we'll see if... Okay, so how about Liz? And we do need to double check with John, although I think he was interested, but I don't want to speak for him, even though he is the vice mayor and he's supposed to be there if I'm not, but, Okay, so let's call it that, the group for there, and for DC.
DC's April
19th and 20th with
travel on either end.
travel on the other ends, I mean, both sides. Okay, is that all we need to do with this at this time? All right. So now, the other new business is the City of Seward Recreation Center project, and a discussion about that. We have in our packet the whole results of everything, and we're all aware of this project and where it stands, and do we want to discuss how to proceed or what to do? Councilmember Finch, I'll start with you and we'll just work through.
I've done a lot of research on this one, comparing everybody, Nikiski, Soldotna, Homer, all of their rinks compared to Seward and the populations. I've got all the numbers here, but it boils down to all those places that had the facility, they had literally double the population we have that supported it. I don't know how many votes were on this. My understanding was 211. Some of the comments I read, I fully agreed with, that housing should be our #1 priority. Nobody sitting here knows what that housing up on the hill is going to end up selling for. Hopefully it's affordable for everybody. I believe this would also take away from other businesses in town that exercise Apex Gym and all that. Seward was ranked the 41st largest city in Alaska this year. So we went from 37 to 41st in 2 years. So we're losing population. I hope the city, if they're going to set any land aside, we focus on setting aside for housing only, no other projects. I would like to just, personally, we're putting the cart before the horse. And my 30 years of living here, I've seen jobs come in with no housing. We keep bringing the jobs without the housing. Let's get the housing cart first, taken care of before we look at anything like this.
We could just go down the row if you want.
Well-
Councilmember Calhoun.
Yeah, I don't think funding is a discussion right now. That will be a big part of the discussion when that time comes, if it comes. But I do think that we should take that North Fort Raven property and set it aside, at least for the next couple, 3 years, as a site for a recreation center if it comes to fruition. It is, of the property that we have, probably the very best site for that to happen, close to the schools and that. And I think that at a minimum, what we need to do is probably determine that property as not up for sale at this point and do that for 2 or 3 years at least, to give the community an opportunity to see if this actually can be done, you know, reasonably between private and public partners or nonprofit partners or whatever it might take to fund it. There's lots of funding possibilities, lots of taxes that can be raised, but if you look through their studies, that's really not what people are looking for. They don't want their taxes to go up. Everybody wants a rec center. Get that. I'd love to have one. But, you know, money is always going to be the big issue, and at least we can give an opportunity if we set that property aside for 2 or 3 years to see if that can develop reasonably, and then if not, we can move on from there. That's just my thought.
Thoughts on this side of the table? Any of you?
Yeah. I lived in Alaska in the 90s, and they built a rec center in the 90s, almost identical to the one that's proposed here, and it was a huge success. It really was a great place, right across from high school. Just really good energy, but they had a lot of money. They were looking for ways to get rid of their money, really, and that's where I struggle with this concept. I like that idea of the Fort Raymond setting it aside. I do think this town needs more. I mean, those surveys were quite clear. Everybody wants more indoor space to. We all know it. We need it. It's just how do we fund that, and what does it look like? And I like the idea of looking at more, private, looking at ways to fund it privately and publicly. Yeah, I think that's it.
Councilmember Wells.
You probably didn't know this, but I went to high school in Alaska the year that they put in the rec center.
How old's that?
We don't even want to know.
Yeah. So, and it was incredible.
Yeah, it was great.
But my family had been there for quite a while, and this community had a ton of money. As a person that enjoys writing business plans for fun, I thought that's why I supported the $100,000 for this proposal, this plan to be brought to fruition. Or so that we could look at it, to see if it could be brought to fruition. But it's clear that private enterprise would never fund this because it can't pay for itself. And it is a huge expense to the city. So the only way to fund it is, or just to fund the maintenance of it and the employees of it, is to raise taxes. Where else is the money going to come from? And so I think that we did exactly what we said we would do when we spent $100,000 on this study. And the study proved that it's not a viable project. So that's where I'm at with it.
Councilmember Moss, do you have opinions?
Well, I really tried to just keep an open mind and listen to everything from the beginning because I really didn't have a personal feeling on it one way or the other. And I think I've kind of gotten to the point here, going through the budget and listening to everybody and talking to everybody and seeing the studies. By the way, I'm really appreciative of the second study that the city sent out asking how people wanted to pay for it, because I felt that was a component of the first feasibility study that we asked to be included, and it wasn't. And there was supposed to be grand plans on how it was going to be sustainable, and we didn't get any of that. And I could have told you that 75% of the population wanted a rec center. I mean, we also want a sushi restaurant, and we also want a mall and whatever. So the point is, yeah, everybody wants a rec center. I want a rec center. That'd be awesome. but I don't want to burden my nieces and nephew with that huge financial burden down the road if it's not smart. At this point, I'm more concerned about making sure our departments are fully funded, making sure that we have enough firefighters, making sure that we can have enough staff to open up AvTech every day, make sure that we can have a position that can clear off Second Lake, and continue looking at possibilities for a long-term financial sustainable plan for a rec center, and then I could support dedicating a piece of land and something like that. But at this time, I can't. I just can't support putting aside a piece of land when I feel it could be used for something else potentially, and I don't want to dedicate it specifically to something that might not happen. That's where I'm at.
Thank you. Well, I kind of agree with Liz more than the others. It sounds good to set aside the land, but are we really thinking that we're going to do something with it in 2 years? I mean, is it realistic? We need to decide, is somebody waiting to purchase that land? We haven't decided what to use that land for yet. So, Councilmember Finch, you've got something.
I mean, fire life safety, we know we need a fire department building, we know we need a jail. That's where I'm looking at. Fire life safety is my focus. That land could be used for things of that nature.
Right. Well, there a couple of things we could do. We could do nothing tonight and decide nothing. We could make some direction for the city manager to come back with something. We could have a motion for something here, one way or the other. Do I have any kind of motions from anyone? We can actually vote on something if we want to tonight. No motions. There really isn't a consensus here to move forward with the project as I see it. There's a suggestion of possibly the land, which that suggestion could come back in form of a resolution, correct? To set aside land, that portion of land, and we could vote on that at a further meeting. That's one option, if that's agreeable. I'm afraid if we were to sit tonight and have a motion to set aside the land, it probably would not pass tonight. So if that's the desire, I mean, should come back as a resolution, and that's kind of kicking the can down the road. I'm just, stop me if I'm wrong here. I'm just trying to bring together what the thoughts are. So, yes, Councilmember Wells.
Yeah, I think you said it correctly. When to tie up a piece of land for 2 years, when we have this feasibility study right here that shows we can't afford to build it, we're not going to be able to afford to build it in 2 years. We just got done doing the 2-year budget. So why would we tie up a piece of land, and it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. Who knows? So I think that not tying up a piece of property at this point is, it's not necessary to tie up a piece of property.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Because we're having a conversation about recreation, if we decided not to run with, obviously we're leaning that way. Could we somehow, we're talking about the budget, so it's probably too late, but maybe next year at least. I mean, for instance, this project was going to commit I think $400,000 a year, I think, running in the red on that. Could we commit to beefing up our Parks and Rec, or somehow making this city more friendly towards indoor recreation, and looking at ways to do that in a more fiscally responsible way?
Well, we have had suggestions just this evening of expanding our use of AvTech, if that's allowed. That would cost some money. Also covering the basketball court for outdoor basketball in the rain. I don't know how much that would cost. There are options of that sort of thing. So, and we could pursue that. Councilmember Finch.
Yeah, so I've lived here 30 years. We've got already a lot of indoor stuff. We got multiple gyms. I used to go to Ad Tech. We used to go up there to the school, walk the hallways, run the hallways. I did all that with my kids. Okay. The basketball, the volleyball, it's here in town. But putting it all under one roof, when, one, it's going to affect other businesses, like, for example, Apex Gym, and two, we're starving for housing. If a developer this summer approaches and says, hey, I want to buy that chunk of land, are we going to be dumb enough to say no?
That's a good point. Okay, so I think...
I agree with Councilmember Wells. Don't reserve any land. We need every square inch we got.
Well, I think that's where we leave it tonight, then. Okay. That's where we leave it. Other things that we have, other items, if you would care to have some nice reading. We have a report from the city clerk's travel to the KPB Office of Emergency Management Joint Information Center. And we have the Hyper financials, and we have the Providence financials in the packet, and I could direct you to those pages if anybody wants that. And that brings us to citizen comments. This is the period where you can have 5 minutes per speaker if you should so choose. And I don't think there's a sign up for this, so you just raise your hand and I say yes, and you come up and speak. Okay, yes, and you can come up and speak. See, it works like that.
Micah Van Buskirk, Seward City Limits. I disagree that we can't afford it. The $400,000 number in the study was, and he said this during the presentation, that was already, or a good chunk of that could be used with existing staff, sorry. It was 7 staff members, and he said probably 4 of the ones we have on staff already could be the bulk of that. I firmly believe that it would be an excellent way to consolidate. Our Parks and Rec is in all kinds of different buildings that are falling apart and have been condemned, buildings. Boys and Girls Club requires a bus ride. Boys and Girls Club needs more space. We don't have enough space for Boys and Girls Club. We could consolidate all this next to the schools, give the kids a place to go, give them that energy that kids need to be entertained and have somewhere to go. We have AvTech that we're paying $80,000 or $90,000 a year to. Boys and Girls Club is $190,000 a year. If we could consolidate all that personnel into one area instead of having walking at the railroad terminal, basketball at the AvTech, Senior Center and Boys and Girls Club downtown, if that could all be in one place within walking distance for the kids, and it could really save some money for the city. That is not what this study was asked to do. The study was asked to look at whether it was needed and what it should be. That it did not say that we couldn't afford it. It just put some numbers out there. We didn't ask them that. So I disagree that the study is an open and closed study that said we can't afford it. It gave us some numbers of what it would cost. There was no evaluation of what our city's currently spending on these kinds of services that we could consolidate and maybe sell some other properties or do some good in other areas. I have a couple other things. I do think we can afford it. I think nobody wants to raise taxes. I totally agree with that. There is a recreational service tax, which is an option that was less horrible to most people. And I firmly believe that the opportunity is here to pay for the remainder of what would be needed of that $400,000. And that's in our campgrounds. And everybody's been talking about, there's more money to be made off of our campgrounds. We are not charging people enough for our campgrounds. We can let those people pay for these kinds of services for our kids. It wouldn't have to take away from housing. I firmly agree that housing is super important, but we need something for the people who live here year-round to do and to be active and to be healthy. And this is something the community's needed for a really long time. And that is the last little chunk of land near our schools, that our kids can use. And I think it's really important, and I hope you do think through it. I'd love to chat with anybody about it. I do think we can afford it. I think we can raise those campground rates and pay for the difference, and we can consolidate our Parks and Rec in one area and make this work for our community. And I suspect it could be really truly analyzed deeply, which is not what Victus did. They were asked to look at a demand study and what should be built based on what people thought. They were not asked to examine our budget and how we could save money and make this work. That was not what they were asked to do. We could save money, possibly even. And they may partner with some private people. And childcare. It included childcare. That's a huge need in our community. That could be the private part of this. There's a lot of important things to consider. And I sincerely hope you guys don't just shut the book on this and let something the community has looked at and wanted, and I think we can do, and I know we can afford if we prioritize it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hi, Kat Sorensen, inside Seward City Limits. I wanted to say thank you again to the City Council for funding the Seward Chamber of Commerce's Economic and Development and Tourism Marketing contract with the city. We look forward to continuing our hard work and dedication to the City of Seward. I'd also like to reiterate that my door is always open for conversations with council members or constituents. I love to talk about Seward, and anytime, any questions, anything, come on by. 2001 Seward Highway, 10 to 4. Also, as a regular citizen, I am fully supportive of opening AvTech longer, and if anybody is interested, Thursday night from 6 to 8 p.m., I will be playing chess there with a bunch of chess boards, so if anybody wants to come play chess, we'll be doing that all winter long, so feel free to swing by. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah. First thing, a quick thing on the campgrounds. I run a campground for around 15 years, and the thing that I've found that the customers appreciate more than anything else is clean bathrooms. And they don't have...
Sorry.
Yes.
Needs to state his name and residency.
Oh, I'm sorry, I dropped the ball.
Okay.
This is the one time I didn't ask for that. I'm tired. Go ahead, Tim, tell us who you are.
I figured everybody knew me by now. Tim McDonald, Inside City Limits. Thank you, Randy. It's been a long night. People appreciate clean bathrooms. They don't have to be fancy, but you gotta paint them. They can't just be bare cement. And when you've got people using them all day long, you can't just clean them at 8 o'clock in the morning and think, man, I'm done for the day, baby. No, you gotta clean them every 2 hours when they're busy like that, or they become cesspools. Anybody that's ever stopped up at the pass going to Anchorage, they look in there, slam that thing. I mean, they get that way in just a few hours because nobody cleans them. Boom, 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 they go downhill really fast. You clean them, people respect that. You paint the inside of it. That one down there, you guys are not near as bad as the state, but you got a lot of work to do. So start at the bottom and get those things in. That cost me a minute right there. The other thing is what happened to Jesselee Home Site up there. That's the perfect place instead of by the highway. It's surrounded by neighborhoods. You make it zero maintenance. Cement floor, wood basketball court one end, pilings around it open. You can have alcoves around it so it's only 50% open. You got to give the kids area where they know mom and dad aren't watching all the time. But you keep that baby open. You can have heaters in the ceiling to put it down. They'll use the heck out of it. You put something fancy with $1 million windows and all this stuff, nobody will ever use it. In '64, I was 7 years old during the Good Friday earthquake. And we were due to go down to the waterfront and have the Good Friday dinner at 5 o'clock that afternoon. And if the earthquake had been later, it would have wiped us all out. And all that big thing the whole town was going to was a tin shack. I mean, it was a warehouse, but there was no insulation. It was just tin. It was a big warehouse. Who cared, man? We threw the tables up, put the tables on them, and we had a feast. That's the way that we did things back then. So, now the thing I wanted to talk about, which I don't have much time left, is the sewer pond at Lowell Point. As I said, I think the answer, just right off the top of my head, is centrifuge that sewage before it goes in Resurrection Bay. But we've got to do something. Either that or you've got to use heat to burn off all the water, and you've got to get that stuff out of there. It's ruining the bay. Whether you realize it or not, from Lowell Point, you go a half a mile due south. There's a huge area there, which is a gray cod nursery. You can go out there and sit in your skiff. You can get 200 of them that are this long if you want. They're almost always there. I think they migrate for a few months, but it's a gray cod nursery. Our guys catch them, you know, out there. You go farther on another couple miles inside Cane Head, there's a seamount that comes up to 100 foot below it. It's a black cod nursery. Okay, our guys get $6, $7 a pound for black cod. That's headed and gutted. And they do that 80, 90 miles offshore. Where do you think those little babies come from? They come right here in Resurrection Bay. And we got a 24 or 30 inch sewage line dumping raw sewage. You can call it anything you want. It's raw sewage with lots more chemicals added, so it's palatable to us, not to the fish that are breathing it and swimming through it. And we're dumping it in there. It's affecting them, folks. I think it's what made those silver song to sing. I think it's what drove all the silvers away from Tonsine out there. In the 80s, we went out there and we'd seine up 2 boatloads a day, the whole fleet, 12 of us. We'd have 2 boatloads of dogs and silvers out of Tonsine in one shot. That was the last time we got a commercial opener in Resurrection Bay. And they ain't there anymore, and it's because of that damn sewer pond. So somebody spend $50,000 or $500,000, do a study on it, figure out the best answer, and quit dumping raw sewage in Resurrection Bay. And the other thing, every cruise ship has 10 acres of bottom paint on it. Those 1,200 foot ships have 10 acres of bottom paint.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll explain that to you later.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
Maggie Wilkins, Inside City Limits, also Parks and Rec Director. I just wanted to thank Micah and Greg and all the other players that have worked tirelessly on this project and have committed who knows how many volunteer hours Micah's been involved in this regarding the Community Rec Center. I'm sorry. I tried to sneak in before. You've been involved over a decade, maybe more. I've purposely just hung back and observed because this is just one of a lot of other projects that are currently under my supervision, and I never want to speak out of turn or speak on something I don't understand fully. It is a very complicated project. Of course, it would benefit us greatly to have this. But it's important to keep in mind that there are a lot of important projects. We're no less important, but there are, as far as facilities go, there's so many aging facilities out there. There's 2 other facilities that are already on the legislative priority. I really do hope, though I'm a little nervous about the project dying, so I'm going to echo Micah's concerns. We do have great momentum going, and so I hope there's a compromise that can be met, that we can keep some energy pumped into this, because, as far as that argument of this isn't an essential service, just doesn't hold water anymore. Everybody here can agree that community gathering and recreation is integral to our mental health in this community, and certainly after the last couple of years, we need to keep that in the forefront. I just hope that we can find a compromise and discuss a little bit more about how we can
keep the momentum going one way or another. But I do recognize that there's a lot of other factors to take into account.
No, just one shot. Is there anyone else that hasn't spoken? Okay, so I'll close that and bring it to council and administration comments and responses to citizen comments. Administration.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay. So council members, let's start with Councilmember Barnwell.
I really appreciate those comments, Maggie. I'm a huge proponent of recreation, and luckily most of mine's outdoors, but a lot of people in this community, I taught in the schools for years, 30 years, and I miss that community of indoor being with community. And I do really think we need a place that's communal for this town. We really do need something. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how we pay for it, but I'd certainly like to keep looking at it. So thanks for the comments and work like that.
Okay. Councilmember Finch.
I'd like to thank the girls cross-country team for shining like they did. I mean, that's pretty amazing. The Christmas lights, my grandson enjoys seeing every day we go to school. They just seem to keep popping up everywhere. Thank Norm for letting us know the Coast Guard gave him an update. And my grandson will be happy to hear that the bike park is officially a park because he loves going there.
Good.
You know, I still think the fire department, an upgrade should be one of our highest priorities. And that would be something I'd like to see that land looked at for, or a developer come in. But the Christmas lights are getting very impressive. It's every morning we drive, now he's looking. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Wells.
Yeah, I'd like to echo the congrats to the Seahawks varsity cross-country team. And I was out of town and came home to all the lights, and I was pretty excited about it. And of course, having the light behind my tree makes it so I don't ever have to put up the Christmas tree behind my house makes it so I never have to put up a Christmas tree, so I'm extremely appreciative of that. And I'd like to thank the Hilltop Properties for working on that development. It's extremely exciting. And I was out shopping. All three of my adult children were here visiting for the holiday, and we all went out and participated in Shop Small, and it looked to be a huge success. And so I'm grateful to everyone who went out there and supported our local businesses. And thank you.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Well, I think everybody's heard me talk enough tonight.
That's it. Okay, Councilmember Claus.
I kind of feel the same way as Councilmember Calhoun, but I definitely want to shout out to Micah and Greg and everybody that's worked on the rec center idea, and I am supportive of keeping the momentum going in looking at what, it could be, even though I'm not supportive of dedicating the land. I'm definitely open-minded to that still, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'm very impressed with the cross-country team. We had some high school government class students here tonight. I didn't want to embarrass them, but I guess one of them at least got extra credit points for getting a selfie with me, which is kind of a little creepy, but that's cool.
That would be Porter Rockwell.
Yeah, that would be exactly that student. I've been enjoying the lights. I enjoyed getting to, along with the chief, light the Christmas tree out there. He helped me put the plugs together. I'm really impressed. And just to reiterate, there's another almost mile of lights that's going to get up somewhere in town that just haven't gotten here or haven't been put up yet. And there's a whole lot of Christmas activities coming up, if you didn't know. Thursday, the Sea Life Center is having their Christmas party, I guess they call it. Pardon? December 1st. At 6, and apparently at 5:45 I'm supposed to welcome Santa. So as the official mayor welcomes the official Santa, so that's exciting. And of course there's the bazaar this weekend, and Seward Band, community band, which is flourishing. is playing at 2 o'clock. And they're actually doing like a mini concert, so if you can be there at 2 on Saturday. And then I spent the morning, sometime this morning, decorating the museum with other Historical Society people. The library's all decorated on the inside, but the museum now is too. And the library and museum, we're having open house on December 10th. That'll be before our next meeting, so I don't get to tell about that then, but I'll be playing the pump organ like I do, and it'll be very festive. I had a bunch of calls. This is totally not what we've been talking about, but a citizen mentioned the burn and the smoke from the burn, and I had some calls about that. They all came right about the same time, and I contacted administration, got an immediate response that they spoke to the people. It ended very quickly, so I want you to know that if something like that is bothering you, give me a call and I can direct you to the people, or and we do need to work on maybe reining in that massive burning of stuff. I don't know, but we can talk about that later. And there's probably a whole lot of other stuff. We did a lot tonight, and it's a lot to contemplate afterwards. So I think with that note, at 9:45, a nice number, I will adjourn the meeting.